The J&L 3.0 driver side oil separator that we're talking about here today is going to appeal to the 2019 and newer V8 Silverado or Sierra owners who are looking for the ultimate in protection in regard to capturing the oily vapors produced during combustion from being rerouted into your truck's intake track and basically gumming things up. Now the J&L will feature a billet aluminum 3-ounce container in black, along with the factory style hoses and fittings. Laser etching on both the canister and bracket, all for right around that high $100 price point. Install is going to be a total plug and play job, guys. So figure a soft 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. Site calls this one an hour to complete from start to finish. I feel that's a bit much, but regardless, hang out with me for a bit and we'll walk you through that job later in the video. Alright, so if you guys didn't know, your truck has what is called a PCV system, which is short for positive crankcase ventilation. Now the purpose of this system is to regulate and ultimately remove fumes produced during combustion from the engine crankcase to help alleviate crankcase pressure, which would otherwise lead to things like oil leaks or seal damage. Now because laws do mandate that the PCV system is sealed, well then the engine has to use vacuum to draw these vapors out of the crankcase and then plumb them back into the intake track where they are ultimately to be burned off during the next combustion cycle. Now, while that all sounds good in theory, and sure it does pretty much play out that way, the problem is these oily vapors tend to end up leaving a residue in the intake manifold, and even on the back side of your intake valves, which can lead to things like valve coking or deposits over time. Now, full disclosure, guys, we do have the driver side here with us today. I would argue the passenger side typically does most of the heavy lifting in regards to being the more productive side, if you will. And if you haven't already considered or installed a passenger side separator, well, I would certainly recommend doing so, and you can find those here on the site as well from J&L and other manufacturers. Now, the driver side, I would say, is still gonna be a great addition and a perfect complement to that passenger side option. And with both installed would ultimately equate to the utmost protection for your 5.3 or 6.2 powered ride. But with all that aside, how does this little guy from J&L work? Well, what happens is that oily vapor is basically gonna pass through the PCV system and into the J&L separator. Now, at that point, the solids present in this vapor, basically those little tiny particles of oil and unburnt fuel and whatever other junk, get caught up in the aluminum honeycomb and stainless steel mesh material up top, and then drop down into that canister below while still allowing your fresh, clean air to pass through. Now, as far as emptying this thing, well, you got a knurled bottom here, which helps you unscrew everything. And J&L claims doing so every 5,000 to 7,000 miles would probably be in your best practice. Now, in my experience, I've had a few of these on my trucks in the past. They tend to fill up a little quickly, sometimes too quickly, depending on the condition of your truck, the weather conditions, and so forth. So basically telling you, not a bad idea to check it every couple thousand miles just to be on the safe side and ultimately empty it in a responsible manner. Don't just go pouring it in the yard or down the drain or whatever. Last but not least, guys, if you haven't already done so, feel free to read up on the many 4 and 5-star reviews on the J&L back on the product page. Again, if you haven't done so already, always great to hear from other 6.2 or 5.3 owners, especially in regards to their experience with the separator. Now, as far as your construction is concerned, very solid build here with the J&L. That does include the knurled billet aluminum canister. You got that 3-ounce capacity, along with the laser etched J&L logo right up top. And as you can see, this feature, or this option, does feature that stealthy black finish. But if you preferred maybe a little bit more flash under the hood, well, J&L also produces a satin silver version instead that you might want to check out for a similar price point. Now, one of the big pros, I would argue, of the J&L kit, at least for me, is the inclusion of the factory style hoses and fittings. Hoses have already been cut to length for you. Fittings make this a very simple plug and play job that will ultimately deliver a factory-like fit. Now, speaking of that install, let's dive into that a little bit more. And as I mentioned earlier, this is pretty much a plug and play job, but the one lone exception is mounting the bracket here with the included hardware. Very simple stuff. Again, site calls it an hour. It'll probably take you about half of that in my humble opinion, but regardless, to give you a better idea of just how this one will go down, check out our detailed walkthrough and tool breakdown now.
The tools you're going to need for this install include an electric ratchet or a regular ratchet, a long extension, 10mm deep socket and regular socket, an 8mm socket, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a trim removal tool. How's it going, everybody? Today I have a J&L oil separator to install on our 19 Silverado. I'm going to show you how to do it step by step, so let's get started. To start off, we have to do some pre-assembly. which means removing the air intake plenum. To do that, we're going to use an 8mm socket. I got the 8mm socket along with an extension on my electric ratchet. If you don't have one of these, you can use a regular ratchet. And we're just going to loosen this clamp up right here. Then there's another clamp behind the intake plenum. It's located right about here. Just kind of got to get your head back there to see it. Just loosen that up a bit. Now you can remove the hose right here from the box and just kind of lift this out of the way for now. Next, we're going to move the coolant tank out of the way. And there's a 10mm bolt that's right down here. We have to take out just so we can slightly move the tank. I'm using my 10mm again with an extension. There's the bolt. Keep that safe because we will be putting that back. Then we just got to move that out of the way like that, and that's where our bracket for our oil separator is going to go. Now let's locate the PCV hose, which is right here. There's a connector on the PCV valve itself. So we're going to disconnect the hose from this side first. The gray tab you have to push on, and then you can pull the hose right off of the nipple side here. Next, we're going to get the other end off, which is on the manifold. So it's the same style connector. It makes it a little easier if you can rotate the hose and get your hand underneath these wires here, push the connector, and take it out. At this point, we have a little bit of pre-assembly to do on our oil separator before we can put it in our truck. We're just going to take the supplied mount and hardware, mount it up here, and then get it in the truck. All right, so we got our separator, our mount, supplied hardware. And as you can see, there's threaded holes on top of the oil separator, 4 holes on the mount. So you can orient this in different positions if you have different stuff in your engine bay. The easiest way for us, since we don't have any other aftermarket parts in there, is to mount it in this orientation. Hose is facing forward, and then bracket going this way. So we're using these 2 holes, and we're going to take the 2 screws, thread those in by hand, a few threads, then take Phillips head screwdriver and snug them down. All right, that's it, we're good to go. Okay, we're ready for install. So we're back in the engine bay here, and we're going to install or mount our oil separator on this stud right here where our coolant overflow tank is. And we're going to take the supplied 10mm nut, thread that on, then we need a 10mm deep socket, and just snug this down enough so it doesn't move, like that. We can put our overflow tank back onto the stud and connect our lines. So we have one long line and one short line. The long line on the right side is going to go onto the connector that is on the manifold. So we're actually going to route it underneath the wiring here. So I was struggling a little bit to get this hose clicked into place, so I decided I'm going to get a trim removal tool and move this harness out of the way. And there's 2 wire ties that are holding it onto the manifold cover here. So I'm going to remove those just to make a little bit more space. One there and one back here. That one was loose enough just to pull up my hand. Now I should be able to get my hand in here and click it into place. All right, so it didn't make an audible click, but if yours does the same and you don't hear it click, but you think it's in, just give it a little tug, make sure it doesn't come off. So ours is good. We're gonna connect our other hose directly to the PCV valve, just right here. And that one you could actually hear click. Still gonna give it a little tug, make sure it's in there good. All right, now we're gonna grab our coolant overflow tank screw that we took out, put that back into place. Gonna thread it in a couple times by hand. And take my 10mm socket and snug that down and make sure that this is into position when we do so. And while we're here, let's grab the hose on our oil separator and just put it up here. This actually does move a little bit, so we can position it up slightly and put it into the coolant overflow tank. Now we're ready to put our air box back into place. Now we can put our air intake plenum back into place. There's a bracket right here that holds it steady, so make sure that you slot that onto the bracket there. And then the hose that goes on the throttle body is right here. That's the clamp that we loosened, so we're gonna put that hose on first. Once we slide that into place, now we can put the hose that goes onto the air box in place. Tighten our clamps down using an 8mm socket. Just snug it down a little bit. No need to over tighten. Let's not forget this clamp back here. And we're all set. That's gonna wrap up this review and install of the J&L 3.0 black oil separator for the driver's side of your 19 and newer V8 Silverado and Sierra 1500. Thanks for watching, and for all things Silverado and Sierra, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.